Have you ever had somebody say something to you that completely changed the way you see your own story? Well, it happened to me, and today we're going to go a little deep on this topic and we're going to talk about divorce. And so, thanks for tuning in. I'm going to try to get through all of this. I have a lot to say about it, so it'll be a little bit longer. But I remember hosting a meetup some time ago, and the topic was moving on from divorce. So, we weren't really actively talking about the divorce itself and what was happening in the moment, but we were talking about how do you move on from that. And everyone was sharing stories. There were only three of us in the group. Myself, I was hosting it, somebody I knew fairly well at that time, and somebody brand new to the group. Their stories were had a lot more pain and a lot more stuff surrounding their divorces. Mine at the time was pretty uneventful. I was about 20 years in at that point. And so, but we were sharing what had happened. And when it got to me, after I was done sharing my divorce story, one of the gals asked me if I remarried. And at that point, I had been married maybe about 15 years or a little less. And I said yes. And she said to me, well, then yours doesn't really count. And so, mind you, if we were just lining them up and comparing them, she's right. I didn't have the same experiences of either one of them. And I'm not going to apologize for that. That was my story and those were my experiences. But I was really taken aback by that. And I remember I never forgot it. It stuck with me for a while. And listen, divorce is awful under the best of circumstances. So that's the first thing I want to say. If anybody by comparison has felt like perhaps because you don't share the same experiences that somehow it diminishes what happened to you. And I want to tell you, and please hear me on this, it just simply isn't true. Under the best of circumstances, the pain is real. It affects everyone. It affected our family. It had even affected extended family, our friends. Limiting beliefs are real. The stories we tell ourselves, the things we carry around with us as a result of that. But in the moment, I realized something very important. Healing doesn't erase what happened, and building a new life doesn't mean the old chapter didn't exist. Let me say that again. Just because I healed and just because I remarried doesn't mean that what happened to me was any less severe, important in my life, or that chapter didn't matter and have a profound effect on what happened to me. The fact that I wasn't angry or bitter, again, didn't mean that I wasn't hurt, that there wasn't a lot of hurt and a lot of pain, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of questioning, so much, right? The choices I made. So again, even though I considered my divorce a quote unquote, good divorce by some standards, it sucks. Again, the pain is real. We had a daughter, she was 5 at the time. And my family took it hard. It was not, I wouldn't wish it on anybody. So, and there's no handbook on how to navigate divorce. So that all being said, her comment actually made me reflect on something much deeper. For a long time, I carried guilt around, and I carried that into my new relationship. And so while her perspective on what happened to me, that I had moved on and created a new life and found happiness in her view, which the piece that was missing there was that all the things that I told myself during that time that I carried into my next relationship, every relationship in between, and then when I got married again, and who I am today, is really significant. I carried guilt around for a really long time, even while I was building a new chapter. And at the time, I don't even think I realized that it was hanging around. I don't even think I realized that I was holding on to it. But it's not uncommon that we do that. So again, the perspective of, oh, well, you moved on, you remarried, you found the love of your life. The reality is that's not necessarily true. Regardless of what the new relationship is and what that brings to my life, and even if that's, ultimately like where I was meant to be, it again doesn't erase all the things that happened and what I tell myself and what I carried into this new relationship. And in reflecting back on that guilt that I was carrying around, it absolutely was showing up in my life today and later. Remember, we talked about the meaning that we attach to things. We carry the meaning that we attach to what happened before, and it affects us, right? So we start asking ourselves, did I fail? Did I make the wrong choices? Did I disappoint people? Did I disappoint myself? What if, and what if, and what if, right? And if we're not careful, those questions turn into beliefs about who we are. And we've talked about limiting beliefs too. It's really important to pay attention to that. So her comment really allowed me to reflect a little deeper on what that meant, right? Was that true, that none of that mattered just because it wasn't an ugly divorce, just because I remarried and found a good relationship, just because I was experiencing something different today? What happened back then, over 20 years ago, was a big part of who I was. But I wanted to pay attention to the pieces that were affecting what I believed to be true about myself. And so, again, did I do enough? Could I have been different? Could we have done something different? I let people down. I should have known better, right? And it doesn't have to be divorce, by the way. We can say those things to ourselves about any major life transition. What I realized is that I needed to decide what story I wanted to carry forward. So there are certain things about the way we navigated our divorce that I'm extremely proud of. I know that's not everyone's story, but that was mine. And so the question wasn't, how do I convince somebody else that my experience was real, but who do I want to become as I move forward through this? How do I want to feel about it? I had a choice. I could let the hurt and the disappointment really affect how I was showing up. I could let go of the guilt. And so that was another profound thing that happened for me in this reflection process, was that the guilt wasn't serving me anymore. It was absolutely showing up, and it was time to let it go. And so we've talked about letting go being this continual part of any type of life transformation. And it was absolutely for me. So it was time to do that, and I had a choice. It meant choosing forgiveness, choosing respect, and choosing peace. But again, let me be clear. This was my journey, and this was my story, and what was showing up in the aftermath of my divorce and my future. And so there is no handbook on how to navigate this. Some of it was by accident. It wasn't like we woke up and we're like, this is the way we're going to do this, and we're going to, navigate it this way. I learned the hard way. But again, the things that I was hanging on to were a big part of my current life, and that's where I wanted to get some clarity about where I wanted to go next. So our marriage ended, but I still had the ability to make some choices about how I was going to navigate the next chapter. And so regardless of where we are today, reflecting back and just at least asking the question, are any pieces of that still lingering? And again, for me, it was guilt. And how was that? And if that's true, how are we? So it could be anger, it could be resentment, it could just be hurt, right? So if those things are still showing up for us today, how do we want to, how can we shift the perspective on those feelings and emotions? What choices do we have, right? How do we uncover what the choices might be? And by the way, I say this from a place of love and compassion, and I want to encourage you to have love and compassion for yourself and give yourself grace, because I know this is a very painful topic. If you're in the middle of it, I feel you, because I know that it's awful. If you've been through it but the hurt still lingers, I feel you, because I get it. I've been there. And again, it doesn't matter the circumstances, the act itself, the process itself is painful and awful. So I want to encourage you, though, to think about what from that you might be telling yourself today about who you are and what you believe to be true, so we can work on that piece, because that piece is really important. It doesn't matter how great my new relationship is. It doesn't matter if I found the love of my life. It doesn't matter if I've started the next chapter anew. Those pieces that might still be with me, telling me something about myself that I might believe to be true that isn't, are the pieces that I want to get some clarity around. So we get to decide what we carry forward. What happens to us matters. Again, that comment in that moment when she said it didn't matter because it didn't kind of check the boxes of this really awful experience that she had gone through. Or again, the fact that we could imply that because somebody starts over, that the other thing didn't matter is just, ridiculous to me. Now it's ridiculous to me, and it just isn't true. The hardest chapters become the chapters that reveal the most about us, and that, in a nutshell, is next level living, right? I want to be on the other side. I want to understand. I'm not dwelling on the things that I carry with me from the past. I'm curious about them because they tell me something about myself. Every time I go through it, every time I stop and I get curious about what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I believe to be true, I'm learning something about myself, and that's really valuable to me. Give yourself grace. Again, there's no perfect way to navigate divorce, no matter what stage you're in, right? If you've been through it, if it's been years, if it's fresh, if you're just going through it, if kids are involved, it's really complicated. It can be. Have people had really simple, stress-free divorces? Yes, absolutely. But again, it still is something, it's a life transition. It does happen to us. And so if this resonated with you, I know this was a little longer video and a heavier topic, but I hope that it gave you some sense of, one, again, you're not alone, right? This is a space for us to talk about these things and share our experiences, and hopefully I can shed some light on something that may be weighing on your heart or in your mind. And I invite you to subscribe and join me in more conversations about creating lives that we love, one intentional choice, and one with intention, resilience, and strength. And I hope to see you back here.